Ever feel like you're just stuck? Like no matter how hard you grind, your money doesn't stretch, your opportunities feel limited, and somehow, some way, you're dealing with that one auntie who always asks you why you don't have a real job yet? Well, let me tell you something that might shake you up. It's not you, it's where you live. My thought on this is that the place that you live impacts your wealth, your career, and even your happiness more than you realize. And today, I'm going to prove it to you. Hey guys, I'm Jamelia Greer. Today, we're going to talk about why most people never move more than 50 miles from where they were born. We're going to talk about the massive financial and business opportunities available just by moving, and how you can strategically pick a location that works for your goals. And by the end of this episode, you might just start checking flights. Let's go. So, first off, 80% of Americans never move more than 50 miles from where they were born, and that's from the U.S. Census Bureau. You ever notice how folks in your hometown got a whole lifetime subscription to the struggle, like complaining about taxes, rent, and these jobs don't even pay enough, and yet they won't even consider living somewhere else? Have you ever actually thought about moving somewhere else? And I don't mean a vacation. I mean picking up and seeing if life is better somewhere else. The reality is that where you live impacts your income. It impacts your expenses, access to opportunities, and ultimately even happiness. Here's an exercise, right? So imagine if your rent were cut in half, but your income stayed the same. Imagine if you could start a business faster, pay less in taxes, and build wealth quicker, just by changing your location. Let me break this down for you in real numbers. For example, a $100,000 salary in San Francisco will give you the same quality of life as making $36,000 in Portugal. So that's based upon the Numbeo Cost of Living Index. And this is all about this concept called location arbitrage. So it's basically what I'm saying is that your money, lifestyle, and opportunities are radically different depending on where you live. So you're making $100K in San Francisco versus Dubai versus Mexico City. Okay, very different, right? Different amounts that you pay in rent and food and taxes. If you're making $100K in San Francisco, you're paying at least $4,000 a month to live in a shoebox and split groceries with your neighbor's cat. Maybe. Okay, Thailand, you're in a penthouse with a chef and driver for $4,000 a month. It's just math. And the thing is that we don't ever stop to think about what is the value that we're getting for the amount of dollars that we're spending. Taking all of this into account, what I'm describing here is not really a seat-of-the-pants decision to pick up and leave and to move to a country that you know nothing about, where you haven't researched the cost of living or the career opportunities, the quality of life, or community. What I'm talking about is a very calculated decision. 3 things to consider when you're choosing a location. The first would be the cost of living versus your income potential. So, for example, Portugal is cheap, but it might not be so good for business, and the wages are not going to be as high as the wages in San Francisco. Look at Dubai. Dubai has no taxes, no income taxes, but if you want a certain level of living, it can be very expensive. Okay? Secondly, look at the business and career opportunities. For example, tech, AI, Web3. Some cities are booming. Dubai is one of them. Others are not. I would say that old Europe is not booming with respect to cutting-edge technology as much as other hubs are. And then third and lastly, I would say look at the quality of life and community. So is there a thriving expat scene? Do you want to be around other Americans or people who are from where you're from? Do you want the ocean? Do you want extremely hot weather like in Dubai, or do you want to experience snow every once in a while? How much does safety matter to you, and how much does luxury matter? All of those things you have to consider. And so you do the math and you do a survey of the things that you want, and then you get to the point where you have to think about strategy. Because like I said, we can identify problems and we can think about solutions, but at the end of the day, you've got to have a strategy. And what does that strategy look like? Where should you go? This is the question that people ask me the most. And me and, friends of mine who live here in Dubai, we may complain about certain things about Dubai, but at the end of the day, when we lay out all of the different options that we have on where we would like to live, we tend to agree that this is probably the best space for us. Now, that's not to say that it would be the same for you. So this is why this part is probably the most important, okay? You have to think about your strategy because you have to understand what is it that you're actually going for. So for example, I'll give you an example of this. Many people are going for lower taxes, right? And if you're going for lower taxes, there are some countries that you should consider. You should consider UAE. I wouldn't necessarily say Singapore. I would say Panama, Portugal, places where there are lower taxes. Maybe there's no state income tax as you have in the US, or there are wealth-friendly banking options. These are countries where people with money go to keep more of their money, essentially. That's exactly what it is. And so if you're an entrepreneur, Dubai's tax-free setup could save you quite a bit of money. So if your strategy is to reduce taxes, you need to keep that in the forefront of your mind. Now, not everyone is looking to reduce their tax liability, right? Other people are looking for a lifestyle upgrade, and that's why you see so many people headed to Thailand, Bali, Mexico in some cases, and even Portugal. They dream of living somewhere where there's a lower cost of living, but they're still running their business, right? And so $2,000 a month in Bali can get you a villa with a pool and daily house cleaning, right? So like the thought of daily house cleaning in San Francisco, to have a live-in maid, to have a driver, you would have to be making so much more money to have that type of lifestyle. But in other places, that is totally doable. I remember living in Singapore and having a live-in helper, and it was like a dream for me. It was the best thing ever. And it was affordable. All in all, with salary and with government fees and taxes, I think we paid around $1,200 US a month for that. Of course, she lived with us, she had room and board, but it is a win-win, I think, in that situation, because you are taking off so much burden of yourself, and particularly for women entrepreneurs, with respect to cleaning and cooking and childcare. Certainly it's a bonus for you. So those are the sorts of lifestyle upgrades that a lot of people move in order to experience. The third thing would be business builders, and I think I fall in this category. When I left Singapore, the only thing I had in my mind was building out my business. It wasn't anything else. It was not a lifestyle upgrade. It was not about taxes. It was like, hey, I'm building this business, come hell or high water, and that's what it's going to be. So if you are a business builder and that is your goal, then that has to be at the forefront of your strategy. That means you move to a place where the market matters, right? It is an active market. It is a place where it's a global hub, and I'm thinking Dubai, Hong Kong, Singapore. I would even throw London in this bucket, even though weather-wise, a lot of people just don't like London. But it's a place where you can network with other people who are very entrepreneurial. You can raise capital. There are a lot of investors and VCs in the cities, and certain cities just make this easier. It's just easier in those places. And so it's so important to be clear about your strategy. You need to know at the beginning if you're looking for reduced taxes. Are you looking to just experience a better lifestyle? Or are you looking to build your business? Because the answer to that question will determine where you end up. And so when we go back to the beginning of this conversation, and I mentioned to you guys, so many people are stuck because they're complaining about something, right? You're complaining about something, whether it's your rent or it's crime or it's just the way that your life is structured. It's so important to get to a point where you are thinking, what exactly is it about my life right now that bothers me? What is the thing that every morning when I wake up or I start my morning and I go through my day, that this thing is bothering me? And part of that, guys, I think this is really important to note, is that part of these annoyances are the environment in which you live, right? So those are things that are external that you can't control. So if you're annoyed with crime and you live in a certain part of New York City or any part of New York City really, and you're annoyed with crime, the only way that you're going to get away from that is by leaving New York City, right? There's no way that you can change internally to be like, well, I'm not going to let this crime bother me. That's just not going to happen. But there are some things that are not a product of your location. And I think it's important to highlight this, is that there are some things in our life where we may be annoyed by it, but it doesn't necessarily warrant a full-on move, right? So if you're annoyed with your daycare provider for your child, it doesn't necessarily warrant a move. So I want you to think about this, very clearly and identify what is the issue that is holding you back, right? And once you get to that place, assuming that you get to that place where you realize that, well, my money's not going far enough, I wish I had lower taxes, or I wish I had a more luxurious lifestyle where my money would go much further and my $2,000 a month could get me something like live-in help because you need live-in help, or you feel like where you live is not good for your business. Those are very different, right? And I think you should think internationally. It's not always a exercise where you think about another state or another city. Sometimes you have in the back of your mind the place where you want to move to already, okay? And so the next thing that I want you to focus on is how to make it happen, right? My challenge for you, after you've identified what the issue is, after you're clear about it, after you know what your strategy is going to be, are you going to be looking for less taxes or a lifestyle upgrade or building your business? Pick a country, right? Pick a country and research the heck out of it. Research it to the point where you feel like you've already been there, right? And I stress this so much because a lot of people don't do the research and they move and then they're like, hey, I didn't know that, certain restaurants were not allowed to serve alcohol in Dubai. Yes, they're not. You're not going to go into the grocery store and be able to buy a beer. They don't do it, right? That doesn't happen in UAE. There are separate stores for that, right? And you also need to have an alcohol permit to be able to purchase if you live here. So there's lots of things that you need to research. And I know some of you are listening and are like, oh, I didn't know that. So definitely do your research, pick a country, and think about what is the cost of living versus your income. What is the environment? What are the people like? What is the weather like? Right? Research the heck out of it. And then the next thing I want you to do is to consider a scouting trip. Please visit, at the very least, visit the place that you're researching about. Hopefully you'll be able to stay for more than just a few days or a week, but you need to stay long enough to really see the good and the bad of the country, right? And then you need to figure out, after you've done all this research and you've visited and you've seen things, you need to figure out if your job or business can be remote. And this is the part where people often are not thinking broadly enough, right? So, and I'll probably do a whole nother episode on this, but having a business in another country does not always look like going for pre-seed funding, Series A funding, getting venture capital. It's not always what it looks like, right? Having a business in another country can be as simple as being a freelancer. It can be as simple as having a bakery. It doesn't have to be huge. So the point of this third step is to figure out specifically and probably more clearly, can you make money? in this country, right? Can you find a way to generate revenue in a way that's fulfilling to you? Worst case scenario, you try it, you hate it, and you come back. But best case, you unlock a whole new world of opportunities. I really hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I really hope I made the point in a way that you can see the craziness of it all is that, we were born on this planet in one location, and it doesn't say anywhere, there's no law or rule that you have to remain there for your whole life. As a matter of fact, you are just as much a part of where you were born as any other place on this planet, and it is your job to explore. It's your job to see what opportunities exist outside of your hometown. So, if today's episode got you thinking, let's take this further. Join my mailing list for exclusive resources on building a business abroad. I send out step-by-step guides, I send out expat success stories and strategies to help you break free from location limits. I'll include the link in the show notes below, and let's make your next move the right one. And as always, if you enjoyed today's episode, share this with a friend who's been talking about moving but never made the leap. See you guys next time. Take care. Hey guys, thank you so much for tuning in and listening to today's episode. I appreciate when you guys tune in and the time that you take to listen to the show and support us. And I have one thing that I'd love for you to do that would really help us out, which is rate the show. If you've enjoyed it, make sure you rate it. You can do it on whatever platform you're listening on. That would do wonders for us. And if you really want to be a super fan and really support the show, there's a link below that you can support us and donate a small monthly contribution, which allows us to continue to create great content for you. Thanks so much again. Appreciate you, and see you next time.